you know, that's all wonderful. It's good to follow the rules. It's good to do the format correctly. But you have to know what you're connecting to. You have to know the purpose of it all. And going down that rabbit hole of connection means that you are going to be talking to the Almighty and handing yourself over to something greater than yourself. Are we ready to do that? Because if we do, then it's going to make our day that much more stable, manageable, possible. But it also means that we are bracing ourselves to talk to God in ways that maybe we haven't done ever. Maybe when we were children. See, children have no problem talking to the Almighty. They have no problem talking to Hashem. It's not about skepticism, by the way. It's not that which is getting in the way. It's about what that can mean. It's the Johnny versus Elchanan effect. Johnny, who feels empowered by seeing God, and there's Elchanan, who has a bit of trepidation coming close. But we need to. In these times, we don't really have the alternative of saying, I don't need to come close to God because there's a shul somewhere and there's a rabbi at the front of the shul, or there's a rebbitzin by the front of the mechitza. They'll have the connection, they'll have the communication. Someone will be opening up the Ark and the Elah and talking to God. That will work out very, very well. I don't need to do so. I don't need to feel that type of linkage. Unfortunately, we can't rely on that today. Today, we are on our own, but we are very much not on our own. And ultimately, one of the most beneficial parts of davening on our own is to recognize that actually prayer is entirely, especially morning prayers, is entirely about having that connection with Hashem. Now, we can understand the principle and we can appreciate the importance of what davening is and how it will benefit my day, and how having that core and having that internal sense of connection will benefit me. But maybe I'm not there yet with my first stab at prayer, my first stab of waking up, preparing myself, getting ready, opening up the Seder and saying, okay, God, are you there? Knock, knock. Are you listening? I can't hear you. I can't see you. I can't feel you. And then you might start feeling a bit self-conscious, even though you're the only one in the room. Is this a bit of mumbo jumbo? Or what happens if you really, really need the connection and you're not feeling it? In davening, in the Pesukei de Zimra and the songs of praise, right after Baruch Sha'amar, we say, Hodu lo Baruch Hu Shemo. We enter into praising God and we say, Yismach le mevakshe Hashem. Yismach lev, oh, rejoice of the heart, mevakshe Hashem, those who seek out God. This is in davening. Yismach le mevakshe Hashem, oh, how rejoicing of the heart are those who seek God? No, it should be those who have found God. It's those like the rabbi in front of the shul, the person opening up the Ark on the Elah, the guy who is shaking back and forth, the woman who's sobbing at the Kotel wall. It's the one who's there already, That should be the person who has rejoicing of the heart, obviously. The seeker, the person who has not found God yet, that person is going to be the one rejoicing. How can that be? We rejoice in the connection, in that core, in that serenity, in the wholesomeness of being there, not journeying to there. The Malbim, one of our commentaries on prayer and on the Torah, says, no, no indeed. When it comes to relationship with God, the journey is the destination. The journey to being connected to Hashem, the mevakesh, the seeker, the person who is journeying to find their link with Hashem, that is the joy is in the space of the effort and trying. Very different to once upon a time we used to prepare and to travel. Remember those times, all those weeks ago, when we could get on a plane, have to book the cab or Uber, whatever. Will my baggage be overweight? Will my phone have my boarding pass? Will I be able to get that bottle in duty free and come to the other side? Will my plane be delayed? Will my car hire slot or reservation still be valid? The anxiety of travel. Most people don't like traveling. The only people that I know that like traveling, really like traveling, are our children. My children love traveling because they get to watch screens on planes. And oy vey vey when we book Ryanair and they get stuck without screens. Like literally, I've had, our children have said to us that they would prefer not to stay at home than to have to suffer with a Ryanair flight because there isn't a screen on it. Nebucham, I think we've moved beyond that at the moment in time. Journeying typically is no fun at all, but not when it comes to prayer. When it comes to prayer, Yismach le mevakshe Hashem, O rejoicing of the heart, are those who seek and journey towards. And I can tell you that there is nothing greater and more enjoyable than the journey in prayer. I would advise to look at the morning prayers, to look at davening, and to choose one paragraph a day. The authorities make it very clear, especially when you're davening on your own, as long as you're not going to pray in Aramaic. If any of you are fluent in Aramaic, I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. Any language you want to. Open up your siddur, choose a paragraph, and let yourself melt into the words. Let yourself become engrossed with the words that are being shared. Understand them, think about them, contextualize them, and let the words melt into your soul. Without previous convictions or considerations. Take your prayer undiluted and let yourself experience it. Yismach le mevakshe Hashem. Rejoices the heart of those who seek to find Hashem in that space. There's serenity there. And we can say that your day will continue differently. It will have the potential for more space and peace of mind. and you'll find it's cumulative, especially prayer at home. Authorities tell us that prayer at home, it's not that you pray each day, and it's a prayer. Each day is a prayer built upon another prayer. And therefore, the journey of prayer very much is centered around the praying at home. Now let's talk about some of the, is there anyone who wants to, any questions or comments at this point in time before we continue on with some of the tips and tactics, laws, and suggestions? Please feel free. Michael, do you want to say something, or you're?
No, I'm just getting comfortable.
Okay, get comfortable. Okay, great. Okay, so let's continue on with some of the eitzahs, some of the ideas, some of the suggestions which are around prayer. The first and most important thing is pray slowly. This isn't shul. In shul, there's a competition. Who's able to get through prayers quicker? I can't say that I am that good at coming in first. Some are better, some are worse. Okay, Mitch just asked a question. Mitch wants to know whether you should or shouldn't pray out loud. It's really interesting. Praying in shul out loud, especially the parts which are recited more quietly, is not always a good idea. It could distract certain people. It could be considered to be arrogant in some ways if you're praying out loud while other people are praying quieter. At home, praying out loud is a very, very good thing. Praying out loud helps you have concentration and focus. And also another thing is that prayer, most of the time when we bring, especially those who have young children or children, when you bring your kids to shul, normally they don't see us pray. We take them to the children's service. We sing along. We do some singing with them, some children's service songs, but they don't really, when they're in school, they pray out loud. They all sing their prayers, and suddenly they see their parents that aren't doing much praying out loud. And therefore, praying out loud at home is not just something which is good for us to have our own concentration, but also it's good as an educational tool for children to learn the importance of praying. I was very lucky. I grew up in a home where specifically my mother prayed all the time. She used to say, "Good gedavent." When something would go well, she would say, "Good gedavent," which means that we prayed well. If something good happens, means that we prayed well, that God answered our prayers and something good happened. So I would say when you're praying at home, it's a beautiful thing to pray out loud. Don't be self-conscious about it. It is something which not only will benefit you, will also benefit others as well. Good question. So praying slowly is a critical function of davening. As we've discussed, it's not about reaching the destination of getting through the service. It's not a service anymore. This is about personal connection, a personal link, and therefore spend time on it. And that means spend time by saying the things you wouldn't normally say, or alternatively, saying the things you normally would say, but saying them with concentration and with meaning. Yeah. Now, some useful tips which I would recommend in terms of getting prayer right, especially when you're praying at home, are twofold. The first is, where are you praying? Now you might think, I'm praying at home, Rabbi. Praying at home is praying at home. I would say no. Praying at home means that in your house, there should be an established place to pray. This is what we call makom kavua. having a specific location in prayer. There are people in shul who always sit in the same place. For example, I sit always in the same place in shul. I don't do that much sitting, but I do have my location. And that's great. Our sages tell us that if a person is koveya amakom l'tfilah, if a person establishes a specific location to pray, that they always pray in a specific location, then Abraham himself, our patriarch Abraham, will stand by the gates of heaven and will be an ambassador for us on our day of leaving this world, i.e., Abraham, who himself established a place to pray, will say those who have a specific location where they pray, I will advocate for. And therefore, people have a makom kavua, a place to pray in shul. However, our commentaries tell us that actually, when you go to shul to pray, the whole place is one established location. So whether you're sitting in one location or another, it doesn't make that much of a difference. It's all one location, shul. It's when you pray at home and you have a makom kavua, you have an established place to pray. That is what the reference of our rabbis is, that Abraham will be there by your side. To have in our house a corner, a location, an area in which we are able to focus and to concentrate, and that's where we go to pray. We go to that corner, against that wall, next to something which evokes a sense of prayer. That is what we want to achieve. Now, where is that place in the house? I'm not expecting you guys to give me a virtual tour of your house like you would about putting up the mezuzah and to say, oh, this is the place to pray. I can tell you where some places that you shouldn't pray are. You certainly shouldn't pray in places which there's frivolity is common there, i.e., if there's a certain place in your house which is used for things which are not of a serious nature. I don't know if you have a game room in your house, if you have some near your poker table, if you have one of those. Jacqueline hasn't let me buy one yet. Then don't pray there. Don't pray in front of your flat screen. It's just not a good idea, because you are not likely to get into a good mindset. And here's a really good tip in terms of praying, especially at home. When you find that location, best if you don't bring your smartphone there with you. Because no matter which location you have in the house, they're all neutralized by the buzzing or it's not even a smartphone, it's your smart watch or whatever intelligent devices you happen to have accessible that are going to be buzzing and pinging and disturbing. Prayers for you. So find your location and don't have the distractions when you get there. A location which faces towards Yerushalayim. That's a good direction to go in. Choose a place, ideally, which is in the orientation towards Israel, so that you know which way you're praying, your heart towards Israel. Should you pray next to a window or not next to a window? Great question. Well, surprisingly enough, praying near a window might be a really good idea. You see the sky. It can evoke for you heaven. You see outdoors. It can evoke nature and the hand of God. If you're lucky enough to have a window which has a picturesque view, which is calm, pray with an open window, with the blinds open. It's a great place to pray. If your window happens to be facing towards a public thoroughfare in which there's distractions or things that will move your mind away from prayer, might not be such a good idea. But ideally towards east, ideally towards a window, and ideally near a wall where there isn't that much that's going on besides for prayer and focus of prayer. So that's one element about where one should pray. A tip: choose a makom kavua, choose a place to pray, make it a good one, and make that be your location. Don't pray near a place where there's a toilet right next door. That's not appropriate. Obviously, try not to pray in a place where there's any immodesty. Listen, it's in your homes. I'm not saying there's that much immodesty there, but you want to pray in a place which is as sacred as possible. Okay. Some more. Any questions or anything regarding those regarding where to pray or what type of ingredients are right when going towards prayer?
I can give you a practical tip that when using the compass on your mobile smartphone to get the direction, you have to take it out the case. You will get two different directions if the phone's in the case or if the phone's out of the case.
Yeah, so Michael's is saying that it's important to take into account that what you think might be east might not really be east, because the way that our compasses on our phones get orientation, it gets obstructed a little bit when the case is still in, when your phone's still in its case. So maybe take it out to find the right location. Worst case scenario, you can actually look to see where the sun is in the sky, and east to west, and that does work as well. It's very hard to believe that we managed to find east before the invention of a smartphone, but somehow they did manage. So I'm sure we could tap into that were we to want to. Some of the laws of when it comes to prayer are quite important as well to consider. So some things to discuss which could come up quite regularly. We already discussed them, that you could pray in any language were to be necessary, and it's more about the quality of what you're saying rather than the language which we are saying it in. Specifically Shacharit. So there are certain prayers that we need to stand for and certain prayers that we do not need to stand for. Baruch Shamar is the opening part of the Pesukei de Zimra. Baruch Shamar should be recited while standing, even if one is not davening with a minyan. Yishtabach, interestingly enough, which is at the end of the Pesukei de Zimra, which leads into the blessings before Shema, does not need to be recited standing up if you're not davening with a minyan. It's certainly meritorious to do so, but you do not need to do so. Shema. Saying Shema when there is no minyan and you don't have a chazan, in order to get to the number 248, which is an important number when it comes to Shema, it corresponds to the limbs of the body. We say Kel Melech Ne'aman or El Melech Ne'aman before we say Shema, because we otherwise only have 245 words, and we can't rely on the chazan ending off by saying Hashem Elokeichem Emes to add on the 3 extra words. So when you're davening on your own, say El Melech Ne'aman when saying Shema. Another couple of things which are important, which are related, for example, to Shabbat. On Friday night, when we say the Amidah, after the Amidah, it says we say Vayechulu. So we do say Vayechulu on our own. We can sing it. It's a really nice thing to be able to do. But we do not continue on after Vayechulu with the rest of of those prayers. Magen Avos, Bidvaro, all those things are not recited unless there is a minyan. It's just important to know that. On Shabbat morning, we do not say Yukum Purkam and Shemaya unless there's a minyan. But of course, we do say Ashrei. This is all before the Musaf prayers. There's no Tachanun for this month. No Tachanun because it's the month of Nisan. So that's also something just to bear in mind when davening on our own. Now, another thing to consider is when to daven. At what time to daven. Shacharit, the ideal time to daven Shacharit is to say the Amidah at sunrise. I'll let that sink in for a second. Sunrise. I have a cousin. He is my mother's first cousin. So my cousin once removed. He has davened Vasikin at sunrise for probably something like the last 40 years. Quite an impressive individual. I have not davened at sunrise for the last 40 years for two reasons. A, I'm not 40 yet. And B, because, that's not happening. Instead of davening with Vasikin, we often rely on davening with a minyan. So, it's better to daven. It's probably on par to daven at sunrise is daven with the minyan. But when we can't daven with the minyan, anyone who's up at sunrise, great time to daven. Beautiful. If you're not, then at least we should establish, just like we've established for ourselves, a place in the house to daven. Also, we should establish for ourselves the times to daven. To daven at the same time each day, or set times during the week that we daven, and that way we know this is our time for prayer. So right now, we are davening 8:30 a.m. On Sunday morning, Shacharit live, and then 7:45 a.m. throughout the week. The afternoon prayers to daven also is a good idea to daven at the same time every day. 1:15 sounds like a good time to daven mincha, but you can choose your own. 7:15 is the time that we typically daven in shul for Mariv, so that's a good idea as well. It'd be nice if the whole community were all davening at the same time each day as well, to know that not only are we praying, but the people around us, even though we can't see them, we can't hear them, are praying together as well. And if people would like to have mincha or mariv davened live together through Zoom or otherwise, I'm sure that's something that we can facilitate as well. So there is no kaddish which is recited when davening on our own, and specifically someone who's saying who is in their year of mourning and would normally be saying kaddish or has a yurtzeit, I would strongly recommend to open up Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, and to choose a Mishnah. It can be found, Pirkei Avot in the Siddur can be found after Shabbat Mincha. A few pages on is where you can find it, and choose a Mishnah and have in mind the family member or whoever it is we're saying Kaddish for, and the Mishnah, which is the same word as letters as Neshama, as soul, will be in the merit, just as Kaddish would be in the merit as well. So that's something that I would recommend Shachrit Mincha Mariv to go to say a Mishnah, to learn a Mishnah as if you were saying Kaddish with a minyan. Yeah, so to have the times which are established, 7:45 in the morning, 1:15 in the afternoon, 7:15 in the evening, all sounds really good to me. There's also a question about whether you can eat before Shacharit, whether you can eat before Mincha, whether you can eat before Mariv. One should not have breakfast until one has davened, unless you will not have the strength to daven until you have had something to eat. For example, myself, I typically have a cup of tea or something before I daven in order to make sure that I'm focused and have attention. Mincha also should ideally be recited before you eat lunch. And certainly, Mariv as well, it's a good idea to do so. However, as the clocks have now changed, and we now will have a later time for when one can daven Mariv, ideally to daven when it's nightfall already. At least if you have an established time to daven, then you won't forget, even though you've had your meal and been busy with the day. You know it's set on your alarm. 7:15 is going, or whatever time it's going to be, is going to be the time for Mariv, and therefore it will not be forgotten. Those are some of tips and suggestions which are useful in order to make the prayer experience a positive one. Any other questions or any other thoughts on davening or davening at home specifically? How we can make it a more meaningful and a more and halachically appropriate, but also a time of where one can build upon for the day ahead. Okay, yeah.
Is there any rationale why you could daven Mincha and Ma'ariv together later on in the afternoon, early evening?
Okay, so Michael wants to know, in Shul we typically daven Mincha Ma'ariv, especially this time of year when we are able to together rather than apart. So I'll say it like this. Mincha and Mariv davening together is typically done for a pragmatic reason. It's done in order that you won't have to come to Shul twice. Once in Mincha, once at Mariv. It's done to make sure that it's recited, that it's said. Ideally, Mincha should be in the beginning of the afternoon. You've had Shacharit, which is taking you through the morning. Mincha is a time of pausing and regathering your strength. The Mariv is towards the evening, as you're winding down, reflection on the day and calming down for the night, hopefully a peaceful one. So to daven them separately is much more ideal. Also, it allows you to daven Mariv when it's nightfall already, which is certainly more ideal. If one is not davening, if one davens Mariv early, it's just important to try to say Shema at nightfall again, which the main mitzvah of the evening is to say Shema, and it should be done when it's dark. But if davening together is going to be a more reliable way of making sure that it happens, then obviously daven them together. And one should not prioritize the ideal if one is not able to live that way. So Mincha Mariv has its place, but certainly in this period of time, if one is able to daven them separately, then all credit to you to be able to do so as well. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on davening at home? Oh, here's an interesting one, by the way, just something to consider. There's no issue with davening next to a man, next to a woman, if you're davening on your own. The idea of a mechitza is only with a minyan, and therefore, if husband and wife, or whatever it is, that they're davening at the same time, there's no reason why they need to be in separate rooms or anything like that. There's no issue with it whatsoever. So just something to be aware. You don't need to separate when you're davening. A really nice thing to do is, especially on Friday night, is to daven together and to sing together and to share that experience together. And it's highly recommended under the circumstances, nefesh and going on. Beautiful thing to do. I know that's what we try to do in our house. It's not, I can't get my kids, or it's silly to try to encourage my kids to be davening as early as I am during the week. But at times when we could pray together, how nice is that to be able to do that as well? Yeah. Anything else before we call it a wrap for our lunch and learn on davening alone and all the ramifications which are connected to it and opportunities which are involved in it as well. So just to summarize, davening on our own, in some ways, is a good reminder of the point of davening, which is connection, linking ourselves to the Almighty, entering into that vortex, a space of calm, where we have the resolve and the strength to be able to carry ourselves through the rest of the day. Establishing for ourselves a place to daven, which we will be our davening place in the house, davening out loud for others and ourselves to be connected to it. Appreciating that it's about the journey, not the destination when it comes to prayer. And bearing in mind that we can have a longing to be able to get back to shul and hopefully to take some of the positive practices that we've established in home to make, please God, speedily in our times, the shul davening experience that much more meaningful as well. So just another question that Mitch has asked is the role of tefillin. So this is specifically for the gentlemen who are listening in. So the role of tefillin. In the same way that with prayer in the morning, we have an opportunity of entering into that space of connecting ourselves to the divine. Tefillin for men is the physical way of doing that. When we put on our tefillin, we are connecting our heart and our mind to the Almighty. You close your eyes and you envision ourselves enwrapped with God. There's a cocoon there. There's a space there which is tangible for women. They don't need that as much. They have more of an internal connection, which doesn't need a physical action in order for it to work as much as men do. And therefore, when you take davening, which mentally and emotionally gets us there with that physical element of our tefillin, which physically does that, and that is a really great combination to begin the day with. However, one can put on tefillin at any time during the day, and therefore, if for whatever reason it's not practical during davening in the morning to put on tefillin, please make sure that you put on tefillin. You can even wear tefillin at mincha time if you didn't do it at shacharit, and therefore, if you're doing afternoon prayers, then just put on your tefillin then, and that's a great way of doing it as well. Or simply to put on tefillin, just say Shema, definitely gets the job done as well. Mitch, thanks for those great questions. And Mike as well, thank you very much. And to everyone, lots to look forward to as we continue on with the day. Look on the Be Online schedule for everything which is coming up. We have the Daf HaShavua later on towards the end of the day, the Pesach perspectives coming before then. And as always, see what you can do to try to help others. See what you can do to be attentive to the needs of those around us. Keep on davening and praying for all those who need a refuah shalema, who need a recovery, and that's not just for those in our families and those who are in our community, but for the whole world at this time as well. And please God, we will look forward to reconnecting together as the week continues. God bless and look after yourselves. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.